Let me ask you something right at the beginning, before we go anywhere else. What if almost all of your suffering, not the pain of the world, not physical pain, but the suffering, the mental and emotional anguish that colors your days, what if that suffering depended entirely on you never asking one simple question? And what if the moment you did ask it sincerely, not as a mental exercise, but as a real question directed at your actual experience, the suffering could not survive? This is not an exaggeration. This is not a spiritual slogan designed to sound nice. This is something you can verify for yourself today, in the next few minutes, if you are willing to look closely with me. So let's begin. Notice first that there are two very different kinds of pain in human life. There is what we could call the pain of the moment, physical discomfort, a genuine external difficulty, a real situation that needs to be addressed. That kind of pain is simply part of being alive in a physical body, in a world of form. It comes, it is dealt with, or it is endured, and then, in most cases, it passes. But then there's another kind of pain, one that is far more common, far more persistent, and almost entirely self-generated. This is the suffering created not by what is actually happening, but by the mind's resistance to what is happening. This is the suffering created by thought. Have you noticed this in your own life? Notice how often your distress in this moment is not actually about this moment at all. It is about something that happened an hour ago or 10 years ago, replayed endlessly in the mind. Or it is about something that has not happened yet and may never happen, but which the mind insists on rehearsing as if it were already real. In either case, past or future, you are not actually suffering because of what is here. You are suffering because of what the mind is doing with what is here or with what is not here at all. This is worth sitting with. Most human suffering is not caused by life. It is caused by thinking about life specifically, by a certain kind of compulsive, resistant, complaining thought pattern that runs almost continuously in the background of most people's minds, largely unnoticed, like a radio station playing so consistently that you've forgotten it's even on. Now, here is where the one question comes in. The question is this: am I at peace with this moment exactly as it is? That's it. That's the whole question. Simple, isn't it? And yet, if you actually ask it, not casually, but with real attention, you will discover something remarkable. In this moment, right now, as you are listening to these words, is there actually a problem? Not a problem in your life story, not a problem in your circumstances taken as a whole, but right now, in this instant, is there an actual problem present? For most people, when they stop and genuinely check, the answer is no. In this exact moment, breathing, sitting, or standing, listening, there's no problem. There may be discomfort. There may be an unresolved situation somewhere in your life. But right now, in this single moment, you are essentially fine. The problem, when it appears, almost always turns out to be a mental construction, a memory, a projection, an interpretation layered on top of a moment that by itself was actually workable. This is the great discovery hiding inside that simple question. Suffering requires time. It requires the mind to reference a past that no longer exists or a future that does not yet exist, and to treat those mental constructions as more real, more urgent, more solid than the actual present moment. But the present moment, examined directly, without the commentary of thought, is almost always far simpler and far more manageable than the mind's story about it. I want to be very precise here, because this is often misunderstood. I am not saying that difficult situations don't exist. Of course they exist. Illness exists, loss exists, financial hardship exists, conflict exists. I am not asking you to pretend these things are not real or to bypass them with some kind of forced positivity. That would be another form of resistance, just dressed up differently. What I am pointing to is something more subtle and, honestly, more powerful. It is the difference between a situation and your relationship to that situation. The situation is what is. Your relationship to it, acceptance or resistance, peace or struggle, that is what determines whether you suffer. Two people can face the exact same external circumstance. One suffers tremendously, spiraling into anxiety, resentment, despair. The other, facing the very same facts, remains inwardly stable, even while taking whatever practical action is needed. What is the difference between them? It is not the situation. The situation is identical. The difference is entirely in the relationship each person has with the present moment. This is why the question, am I at peace with this moment, exactly as it is so revolutionary. It does not ask you to change your circumstances. It asks you to look directly at your resistance to them, which is a completely different thing, and which is, in fact, the only thing that was ever actually causing the suffering. Let's go a little deeper, because I want you to really understand the mechanism at work here, not just as an idea, but as something you can observe directly in yourself. The mind, and by mind I mean the stream of compulsive thinking most people mistake for who they are, the mind survives, in a strange sense, on non-acceptance. It thrives on complaint, on comparison, on the endless narrative of this should be different, this shouldn't be happening, this is not okay. This constant low-level friction with what is gives the mind a sense of identity, a sense of being, someone with a story, a someone who has been wronged, or who is struggling, or who deserves better. This is what could be called the pain body, an accumulated energy field of old, unprocessed emotional pain that lives in many people, sometimes dormant, sometimes active, and which feeds on further pain, further conflict, further drama. The pain body loves it when you resist the present moment, because resistance generates exactly the kind of negative emotional charge it needs to sustain itself. So when you ask the question, am I at peace with this moment? Exactly as it is, you are doing something the pain body and the compulsive mind do not want you to do. You are withdrawing the fuel. You are stepping, even briefly, out of the story and into direct contact with what is actually here. And what is actually here in this present moment, stripped of the mental commentary, is almost never as threatening as the mind makes it out to be. Now, someone might object here and say, but surely there are moments when the honest answer to that question is no, I am not at peace. This is genuinely difficult. This is genuinely painful. Yes, and this is important. Sometimes the honest answer in this moment really is no, and that is completely fine. The question is not designed to force a false yes. The question is designed to bring you into direct, honest contact with your actual state, rather than living inside an unconscious fog of resistance that you don't even realize is there. And here's something remarkable. Even the honest acknowledgement, no, I am not at peace with this right now, even that spoken or recognized clearly without additional layers of self-judgment piled on top, already begins to shift something, because notice there are now two things present: the difficulty itself and your clear awareness of not being at peace with it. And that awareness, the one that can look at the lack of peace and simply notice it without adding an entire further story of shame or frustration about not being further along spiritually. That awareness itself is already a form of peace. It is spacious. It is quiet. It does not resist. It simply observes. This is the subtle but essential point. The question is not really asking you to manufacture peace through effort. It is asking you to notice the deeper presence in which even the lack of peace is being observed. And that noticing, that simple, honest noticing, is itself the beginning of freedom from suffering. Let's bring this into something practical now, because I don't want this to remain only a philosophical idea. I want you to be able to use this the next time you notice yourself caught in anxiety, in irritation, in sadness, in any form of inner turmoil. Pause even for just a few seconds and ask silently, am I at peace with this moment, exactly as it is? Then wait. Don't rush to answer with the mind. Let the question drop below the surface of thinking into direct experience. Feel your breath. Feel the sensations in your body. Notice what is actually here physically in this instant. Not the story about your life, not the narrative about what's wrong, but the raw, immediate experience of being alive right now. Very often you will find that the immediate moment itself, this breath, this sound, this sensation, is perfectly fine. It is only when the mind pulls you back into the story, but this has been going on for months. But what if it never changes? But I've been through this before, that the suffering returns. And when you notice that happening, you can simply ask the question again, am I at peace with this single moment right now, not the whole imagined future of it? This is not a technique you master once and then never need again. This is a practice, a continuous returning, moment by moment, sometimes many times within a single hour. But each time you ask it sincerely, you are training yourself out of the old habit of unconscious resistance and into a new way of meeting life, direct, immediate, undistorted by the endless commentary of thought. There is something else worth mentioning here, something quite beautiful actually. When you consistently ask this question and meet each moment as it actually is, rather than through the filter of resistance, you begin to notice that life becomes remarkably simple, not easy in the sense of being free of challenges. Challenges will still come, situations will still need to be addressed, sometimes difficult ones, but simple in the sense that you're no longer fighting two battles at once. You're no longer struggling with the situation and struggling with your resistance to the situation simultaneously. You are only dealing with what is actually here. And what is actually here, one moment at a time, is almost always workable. This is the deeper gift hidden inside this question. It is not just a tool for reducing anxiety, although it does that. It is actually a doorway into a completely different relationship with life itself, one where you are not constantly at war with the present, constantly wishing things were otherwise, constantly living several steps removed from your actual experience. Instead, you begin to live directly, immediately, here, now, which, if you look closely, is the only place life ever actually happens anyway. Notice that. The past is a memory arising now. The future is an imagination arising now. Every experience you have ever had or will ever have occurs in the now. There has never been a single moment in your entire life that was not the now. And yet the mind spends the majority of its time somewhere else, entirely reviewing what has already passed, or anticipating what has not yet arrived, and in doing so misses the only place where life and peace actually exist. So let us return one more time to the question itself, because I wanted to stay with you long after these words are finished. Am I at peace with this moment, exactly as it is? Ask it gently, ask it honestly. Don't use it as another way to judge yourself for not being peaceful enough, quickly enough. Simply ask it, and then listen not with a thinking mind, but with a quieter kind of attention. The same attention you might use to notice silence between two sounds, or the stillness underlying a busy room. You will find, if you ask this question often enough, sincerely enough, that suffering, the deep, chronic, self-generated suffering that so many people carry as if it were simply the price of being alive, begins quietly to lose its grip. Not because life becomes perfect, life was never going to become perfect, but because you, the one asking the question, begin to recognize something in yourself that was never actually disturbed by any of it, a stillness, a presence, an awareness that has been here all along, patiently waiting beneath every thought, every emotion, every circumstance, for you to notice it. That noticing that is the end of suffering, not the end of pain, not the end of difficulty, but the end of the unnecessary suffering that thought adds on top of what is simply here. Ask the question, and then, just for a moment, stop thinking and see what remains.